adhering to the rule of law, cooperating based on evidence. We had a murder committed in broad daylight in our country. Now, we can speak about the character of that individual, but that doesn't matter. They are still innocent until proven guilty and not to be summarily executed on our streets. And yet, if we want the cooperation of India and we want your government's assistance in bringing perpetrators to justice, making a public accusation of this nature, to me, seems very wrong-headed.
Since you've been a former Foreign Affairs Minister, can I quickly check with you, when exactly did Hardeep Nijjar become a Canadian citizen? Because last we checked, there was still some confusion about that. It seems the government itself at present is not certain whether he is a fugitive or a Canadian citizen.
Well, that's a good point. It appears that he came to Canada initially under false documentation, then arranged to have a marriage. That wasn't acceptable to Canadian officials. And so there is confusion as to when his citizenship was granted and what had changed that had then made him possible to enter Canada and receive citizenship based on the fact that there was misinformation, deliberate misinformation, presented to Canadian foreign affairs officials.
So you're confirming that as far as your knowledge goes, it's still not clear when he became a Canadian citizen, or whether he is one.
No, it's still not clear. In fact, the current Minister of Citizenship and Immigration has issued 2 statements clarifying this. And so there are still, in my mind, there are still questionable dates that have been put forward, and the circumstances themselves more troubling.
Again, then I come back to that point. Isn't then there substance when people say that Canada is fast getting the reputation of being another Pakistan, a terror haven, not acting on evidence, questioning other countries, but refusing to actually answer about what's happening on its own soil?
Well, look, I would describe this as a very isolated incident. This is not putting us on the fast track to comparisons to other countries that harbor terrorists, known terrorists. We, of course, have to continue to work with allies. We have to rely on intelligence that is shared with us, both signals and human intelligence, which is then examined by officials. And when necessary, if prosecutions are occurring, they go before a court of law and they're examined by a judge. And so I personally do not feel that our country is deteriorating that quickly, but these are troubling incidents and isolated ones, one would hope. And so I continue to have faith in our system of justice and law, but reputationally, you're certainly correct. This is harmful. This is damaging Canada's reputation. And now what's important is what we do next, how we proceed, how we act, and how we uphold our system of justice that protects both Canadian citizens and those, incidentally, who are traveling in our country as well.
Mr. Mackay, if I may just press on that point a little bit more, because one of the earliest cases is of people who have been in Canada since the early 90s. Even those requests are still pending. Do you think it's incumbent on this government, if they don't want to present evidence on Nijjar, at least to start acting against the likes of Gurwant Singh Bath, aka Gurpratap Singh, aka Harjeet Singh, people who've been sitting in Canada since the 90s?
Yes, if there's evidence that's been shared with us, and you mentioned a red notice with respect to Mr. Nijjar earlier, when a red notice is issued, again, our security officials are tasked with looking at that evidence, determining whether it is credible, whether it would be acceptable as the standard in a Canadian court of law, and then acting. If there are extradition requests, for example, yes, we have to follow the rule of law. We have extradition treaties with a number of countries, and I don't believe that is the case with India. But nevertheless, if there is a red notice, evidence presented, a request made from a fellow democracy and G20, a Commonwealth country, yes, we should be acting on that evidence.